Welcome to the African News Review podcast, where we cut through the noise and get to the truth. I am your host, Adesoji Iginla, and each week we are here to challenge the biases, prejudices, and misinformation in the Western press about Africa. Using historical context and contemporary insights, we set the record straight and reclaim the narrative. Tune in every Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern as we uncover the real stories and reshape the conversations about Africa. This is the African News Review podcast, reclaiming Africa's narrative, one story at a time.
I'm going to be the leader.
Welcome to another episode of African News Review. I am your host, Adesoji Iginla, and with me as usual is Ayafubera Enele Esquire, author Kwanzaa, A Celebration, host Rethinking Freedom 98.5, Killeen, Texas, co-host Women and Resistance, co-host Grill and Books. Welcome, sister.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure, always pleasure having you. And the good comrade, Comrade Milton Alimadi, host Black Star News, WBAI 99.5 FM, New York, author of Manufacturing Hate, a book that will soon be making a re-debut because it's about to be refreshed. So welcome, comrade.
Thank you, Karibu. Asante sana.
That said, as we normally do here, it's a news review program. So let's review the news from where you're at, starting with sister. The news.
Actually want to review a news story that is not from where I am, and it has to do with Cuba, because the news media is not really covering this. But Marco Rubio, who gave a speech in Munich this past
the Munich Security Conference.
Really showed where his mindset is. He really sees himself as a white man. And what they are doing is squeezing Cuba. They are trying to break the entire will of that island. So Cuba was getting about 66% of its oil from Venezuela. So now that they have cut off that oil supply to Cuba, even their hospitals, their ICUs, do not have electricity. The airports are shut down. They are essentially shutting down the entire country.
Infrastructure.
They are coming against every single country that is in any way trading with Cuba, in any way helping for, their economy to stay buoyant in any way. They want to bring them to their knees. And Marco Rubio is simply exhibiting some very evil tendencies. And it's not being covered because, of course, Cuba doesn't matter. The press doesn't care about Cuba except for when we can go in and say we've taken over. But this personal vendetta he has against that island and the people is playing out. And we saw a genocide in Gaza. We're watching a genocide in Sudan that is ongoing. And we are on the verge of a genocide in Cuba if we do not have some countries that say to hell with the United States of America and their bullying, and that say we're going to fight back. So right now, similarly to the flotilla that we had that tried to get through the blockade of Gaza, there is a flotilla that is headed to Cuba with resources to assist. As much as Cuba has helped so many other entities, so many other countries, I'm hoping that there will be other countries that speak up. I was watching and listening for whether it would come up at all during the African Union Summit that just concluded today. I didn't watch every single minute of the summit, but I have not heard anything yet. And I'm very concerned about what Trump and his regime, and particularly Marco Rubio, with this white man's energy. And if you heard that speech he gave in Munich, what he basically said is, we are the superior race, because he's considering himself a white man. He traced his lineage to the white Spaniards. And we do not need to apologize or be ashamed of empire building. And in fact, Europe, we are one, we belong together, and we need to fight for our culture. And when he said it, the camera panned to the audience, and these white people are looking at him with rapt attention. And when he was done, they stood up and gave him a standing ovation. Just saying. But in Texas, we have primary elections that start tomorrow. So go out and vote.
Comrade?
Right, so I want to take on the same issue with Cuba from the African perspective and angle. And, remember that time when NATO was bombing Libya and completely destroying Libya? We don't know how many people were killed on that campaign to introduce democracy to Libya. Not a single African country stepped forward, even though all of them were getting billions in assistance, billions of dollars from Libya. And that's at that precise moment, I knew the state of the predicament in which the Pan-African world was in, right? So the Cuban case that the sister just outlined is a similar moment and a much more disastrous moment, because what they're saying is that there cannot be an alternative model of socio-political and economic development. And we want to show you how it will end. And obviously, if it continues like this, it will be a matter of weeks or months. The government will collapse, because if you can't serve people, people start coming out in the streets. Even the people you send out to suppress would not have the motivation, because when they go home, they're the ones who have no lights as well. They're the ones who have no food as well. They're the ones who can't get medicine in the hospital, so they will not obey orders. And once they start disobeying orders, the leadership collapses, the leadership goes into hiding, or the leadership would flee. Now, here's the worst part. Without the intervention and the sacrifice and the deaths of tens of thousands of Cuban soldiers, they're saying as many as 30 to 50,000 may have died in Angola, fighting to secure independence for Angola, fighting to kick out South Africa. And of course, their victory is what led to the independence, the release of Mandela and the independence of South Africa. So now it's a shame that Angola, with all its resources, Namibia, with all its resources, South Africa, with all its resources, and then Big Brother, Nigeria, is the giant of Africa, cannot come together and say, we are not going to allow Cuba to collapse. This is the initiative we are taking. We, as the presidents of these countries, we're going to visit Havana, and we're going to discuss with Havana how we're going to help you go through this hard time. They cannot do that because that would involve directly defying the United States. And none of them can do that right now. They have major business ventures with the United States, the Lubito corridor with Angola. So Angola is not going to stand up for the country that actually liberated them. Otherwise, Angola would have been ruled by Jonas Savimbi and South Africa. You see, that to me, so I'm glad the sister honed in on that story. It's one of the saddest things unfolding right now in front of our eyes.
Now, Russia has said they're going to send oil, send it immediately. And then of course, we know Russia is kind of stretched. They've got this Ukraine war going and other things happening. But how can Nigeria speak up? Nigeria just allowed the United States of America to land its planes in Borno and bring in ammunition. And I don't know what else they're bringing in and what they're trying to stop.
Yeah, that's why I was comparing it to what happened with Libya.
I mean, still on the Cuban case, President Sheinbaum of Mexico has sent 2 ships of oil to Cuba. The Chinese,
they're sending aid.
3 weeks ago, they sent in 30 tons of aid, and they said there was more on the way. So we'll hope to see. Yeah, Mexico is supporting Cuba at the moment. So we'll see how far that stretches. Speaking of the United Kingdom, Palestine Action, a body that was protesting the genocide in what's it called? In Gaza. The Royal Court of Justice ruled that the classification of them as a terrorist organization was an overreach by the government and was immediately squashed. So everyone that was subsequently arrested, over 5,000 people, 50 of which are actually in custody. Some of them were on hunger strike, would now have to be released immediately. And the government has not said whether it will appeal. But the way the judge ruled,
They said it was unconstitutional.
It was unconstitutional, so there is no grounds for.
So there are compensation.
In fact, that is will now have to see where the bodies will now
illegally detained by the government, your own compensation. Your damages.
Yeah.
Yes, your own compensation.
Because I recall the story of a Palestinian doctor who was arrested at her home, actually. Well, Palestinian British doctor, who was arrested in her home just because she had, I think it was something on her social media or something. It's very innocuous, actually. So that's her livelihood, her practice, whatever else. And so, I hope they go for their compensation.
What was so striking about this particular level of arrest was the first wave, the first 1,500 were 84-year-olds.
Yes.
That was just...
Yeah.
Exactly. It was just mind-boggling. It was 84-year-olds, blind, clergy, and they were of that age. And they just came in like, okay, arrest us. And that was it. And then it became an embarrassment. So when the challenge came, we all sort of knew it couldn't even stand the test of time. And the judge on Friday just decided this is unconstitutional and not worthy of the court's time. So,
this is what I predict.
That's it.
I think.
So I guess that judge wasn't like Clarence Thomas. His name isn't in the Epstein files. He wasn't being white-mailed to Caltech.
No, but
no. We still...
I think there's going to be some rollback. I think, and I said this many weeks ago, that they allowed Netanyahu to really overdo it. And the backlash is going to keep unfolding and unfolding and unfolding.
Yeah. I mean, I was telling somebody in some other space that the thing about that last 2 years is it's just unraveled the entire framework of, quote unquote, Western civilization. You've destroyed the rule of law, the freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, the right to everything has just been declared null and void. And so basically it's free for all. So what you now have is the Western governments are now trying to roll back, and watching Rubio at the Munich Security Conference was just an eye-opener and a way of understanding that, yes, some people in the room and majority of those in the room that clapped were of the Eastern Bloc, the so-called New Europe, your Poland, your Hungary. Those were majority of them. The Germans, the French, and the Brits know that this kind of lifestyle is not sustainable.
Plus, this is nothing new.
That said,
this is the same thing they said after the collapse of the Berlin Wall. The triumph of Western, capitalism. And how long did that last? There was a backlash. And now, that's the cyclical nature of these things.
Just taking a quick break here on the African News Review podcast, but don't go anywhere. If you're enjoying our deep dive into the real stories behind the headlines, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Every Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern, we're here to debunk the myths and bring you the truth about Africa. Want to help spread the word? Share this podcast with your friends and leave us a review. It goes a long way in helping others discover the real Africa. Without further ado, let's get back to setting the record straight. Yeah. So that said, we go to the first news story of today, which
we haven't even gotten to the news story.
Yeah. I mean, we're a quarter way through. Yeah, I mean, it goes to show that when you exist in this space where it's a 24 hours news cycle, you are bound to be pulled in all directions. So that said, we go to our first story of the day, which ties into what transpired in the United States last week. And the news story comes from the BBC. It's Epstein survivor calls on palace to search Andrew's files. That is former Prince Andrew, now Andrew Maboutin. And she is a survivor of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse, has called on Buckingham Palace to proactively search files and emails relating to Andrew Maboutin Windsor relationship with a pedophile financier. Juliet Bryant told the BBC she welcomed a statement this week in which the king said he was ready to support the police as they consider allegations against his brother. But Bryant said she was abused by Epstein in the early 2000s, called on the royal family to do more to uncover the truth. And there is one final part. Bryant, 43, spoke to the BBC at her home in Cape Town, South Africa. In reference to the palace, she said, it's great they have made a statement, finally, but the thing is, are they going to actually act on it? We'll speak more on that. The former aspiring model said both she and other victims were willing to be contacted by the palace, adding, I just hope they're not just saying this. I would like to see them actually take action. So,
before you move, can you go back to the picture of the lady being interviewed in this article? I'm just being petty. Okay, carry on.
But then this was what she was like when
which is my point exactly. Black don't crack. You say 43? I'm just
43.
being petty.
I know. You're wrong.
And having said that, please, as a woman who understands intimately the pain of victimization and sexual assault, I am not in any way minimizing the horror of what she has experienced, and I am grateful for her courage in speaking out. And at the same time, Black don't.
Okay, that said, you want to lead and give us your thoughts?
No. Listen, I can't tell you what an honor it is to every Sunday get to hear from Comrade Alamati. No, seriously, you guys go and research him. This is a legend. Yeah. No, he's truly a legend. So I will always prefer for him to talk. And then if I have one or two crumbs to add, maybe. But no, this is your class and I'm just a student. Please, sir.
Sister,
comrade.
Our sister is too much. But on this one, I'll keep it brief actually, because I'm telling you, more incredible stuff is going to be coming out in the next several weeks. This one, I'll keep it short. I think the danger, and I agree with what the victim said, that there's one part you said in the past, they were just saying, the royal family was saying, our hearts go out to all the victims. But now they're going a bit further. Now they're saying we will cooperate with the police. All right, so there's a danger there. And it's a good danger, of course, that Andrew was not the only royal, so-called royal, because I don't believe they're royal human beings, but so-called royal who is implicated in this thing. So are the police going to be transparent if indeed they do go through all his communications? And will they disclose if we find out that many other so-called royals were involved in this? And obviously, if they were, then it needs to be exposed. And we hope to see that. So that's what I found most interesting in this particular article, that they're saying that they're willing to cooperate fully with any police investigation. And I hope the police have full control of that investigation. And not they just say, okay, police, you go ahead. However, this is off limits, Over to you, sister.
Sister?
That's a great point. I'm thinking of when during the Kavanaugh nomination and his hearing, and they said, the FBI is going to vet the the survivors and the statements and all of that. They're going to do an investigation. And then we thought, oh, great. And then there really wasn't anything that was done. So it will remain to be seen what actually happens. What this exposes. What's clear to me as we continue to, Comrade, as you said, there will be more that comes out with these Epstein files. I'm really, really interested in the files from a couple of perspectives. One, where Africa shows up and the ways that African leaders and African women were used to access resources in Africa. And these guys, they may not have wanted to, at least publicly, admit that they were interested in our bodies in this way for at least this group of people at this time. There are other stories that are breaking that show different, but the way they were extracting resources from our countries as consultants, as we are helping you guys to get loans and things of that nature. And it was just bare naked robbery, but assisted by African elites, which is always part of our history, right? So we talk about any of whether it's the Ma'afa that included Arabs or it's the Ma'afa that included the Europeans that we now call the African slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade. There are always these African elites who are co-conspirators, if you will. And so just looking at that part and saying, how do we expose the elites, the snakes amongst us who continue to exploit our continent and our people? Of course, the other story that is starting to come out, and we have to be the ones who go do this research, are the pictures surfacing of Epstein and Richard Branson and all of them on that Kenya coastal corridor, which is also known as a child sexual trafficking corridor, which is one of the reasons why Kenya abolished international child adoption in 2014. And where did these kids go? Do we know where all the children who've been adopted from Africa went? And to the extent that apparently there's cannibalism that has been going on, do we know? So I'm interested in the African angle here. Our bodies, our resources, what role, what is this whole ring, this global ring that is very much connected? And we can see that the dominoes are starting to fall. And who are the accomplices, the African accomplices? And let's expose them. That's one. The other angle for me is also just how demonic patriarchy is. This notion of women having no agency except to be tools for the pleasure and procreation of men, that has now been baked into so many of our societies through religion and politics and so on. Like, I don't see us really reclaiming our humanity in this world without overthrowing patriarchy. These women meant nothing. And then what really breaks my heart, which is not unusual if you read Pedagogy of the Oppressed, there's so many other books, the ways that oppressed people buy into their own oppression. And so how women become even complicit as well,
as you can see in
holding up the patriarchy, in oppressing other women, because they too have bought into it. And when you look at the United States of America and what's happening right now with this white nationalism, even with the Save Act, the way they're trying to really disenfranchise millions of women from being able to vote without spending hundreds of dollars to get a passport, while they are shutting down agencies where you can go and apply for your passport. Simultaneously, they're doing this. But you see white women just cheering their white men along, just holding them up. And then, of course, hey, y'all may not like this. An increasing number of Black women, at least from what I can see on my timeline, rushing to go be married by these white men. I'm like, what y'all smoking, drinking, whatever. But this patriarchy is going to be the death of the entire world. These little men who are so insecure and whose whole understanding of their humanity is based on that member between their legs. And that's what, we got problems. Let me stop it. Let me stop right there. because I don't want your channel to be taken off.
Comrade, you have more to add?
No, not on this topic because we have a lot more ahead.
Okay, yeah. But speaking to what the survivor said there, which is she hopes that the palace would now be much more proactive. Yes, they would. And the reason I say they would be is the king went somewhere in the countryside in the last week and he was heckled
Well,
by, yeah. So that's not something that, no, I mean, in London, yes, they would have heckled him in London. But the fact that he's heckled in the countryside, which is monarchy country, is like, that takes, and then there's an added aspect to it. One was the fact that Epstein found a way of coming into Buckingham Palace. And for them, that was a no-no. And there is murmurings now that not only was Madison passing business secrets, but while Andrew was business envoy, he too might have passed business secrets. So you now have not only the Thames Valley Police, but you also have the City of London Police. And with the City of London Police, when it comes to money, they shut it down immediately because what holds the empire together? Money. So it's going to be different this time around, especially in light of that aspect of it alone. So, and the fact that there has been murmurings here before about should the monarchy continue. If the monarchy doubles down on this, it just fuels the recourse to now say, you see what we're talking about? They're completely out of touch. So basically, he is going to be the sacrificial lamb. They are going to, they've basically said if the United States want to interview him, they would readily send him over. So I think they will sacrifice him to protect the institution.
But the United States doesn't want to interview him because Trump says, let's get over this. It's done.
Here,
if they find, the investigation is ongoing.
If
they do find, yeah.
I think there's a better chance of something happening in the UK because if he comes here,
his
lawyers would tell him to plead the fifth,
No, but here...
That's what Ghislaine did. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
the Metropolitan Police and
let them investigate his emails as the victim.
Yeah. They did raid Madison's house last week. They carted out all his computers, his phones and stuff, and basically said, you've been put on notice that, we're looking into you. And everybody, including a man and his dog, has been distancing themselves from Madison in public. And it's just a joy to watch. But you could also see the duplicity of the media within the UK. That people have been pointing out that you guys basically, champion this miscreant for what, in fact, try to force him on Corbyn. And when Corbyn told you no, you undermined his leadership of the Labour Party. And now the chicken is coming home to roost. So basically everybody's like, him. You can take him. So that said, we go to our next story, which ties into what Sister was talking about, the corridor earlier. And it's from Senegal. It is that Senegal, and the story comes from the BBC. It's that Senegal has arrested 40 members of an alleged pedophile gang linked to France. It says Senegalese police have arrested 14 people and broken up a pedophile gang operating between the country and France. Those arrested, who are all Senegalese, were all part of a transnational criminal group that has been in operation since 2017, according to a police statement. It said the group were accused of organized pedophilia, pimping, rape of minors under 15, sodomy, and intentional transmission of HIV/AIDS. They allegedly repeatedly forced boys to have unprotected sex with men who are mostly HIV positive and filmed. Comrade. Yes, I know.
This is the Epstein version for boys, young boys instead of girls. And so I just want to make a few points because without more information, we can only surmise on what must have been going on. So the first thing is that obviously there cannot be only 14 people involved in this. I don't buy that at all.
Of course.
Right?
And they cannot only be Senegalese.
You're correct. Well, I guess the French version would be on the other side in France.
Yes.
And so they're trying to say 14 in Senegal, giving the suggestion that in France there might be only 14 as well. In other words, they're trying to minimize how horrific this thing is. Correct?
Yeah. Yes, correct.
So that's going to come out soon. We're going to find out that this is a vast thing. And given the way that France has exercised its imperialism in all its former West African colonies, obviously it's not limited to Senegal.
Yep.
There must be a similar network operating in all the other French former colonies as well. So that's the next story.
In fact, they have a name for them. They have a name for the phenomenon of those kids.
Sorry?
Go on. I said they have a name for them. They're called hidden children.
Right. And then let's get on the collaboration nature, which Sister was talking about earlier, with reference to the Epstein version. And this is the saddest part, and it goes back all the way for centuries to when we have collaborators with enslavers as well, right? This is the same type of mentality. You know, in those days, the information was a little limited. Obviously, the collaborators knew that these people that they were collaborating into captivity were going to be subjected to harsh labor. But in today's environment, they actually have the details and knowledge of what kind of abuse
what that means
that is going to be inflicted on these young boys that they're actively collaborating into sending into this modern type of enslavement and abuse and sexual exploitation, right? And then the other thing is that it also tells you the state of affairs in many African countries today. Because not only are we selling away or giving away our resources for nothing, we are selling away. In fact, they have networks that are stealing organs, right? Body organs.
Yeah.
From Black Africans and preserving it and selling it to the outside world. So something like this falls into that same type of category, right? What else are we? In fact, the question is, what are we not selling to the outside world? And if you want any evidence of complete failure, and I say this all the time, when I say failure, of course, I'm not talking about African failure. You know, in fact, we're saying the elite that are governing African countries are suppressing Africa from realizing its full potential and Africa from flourishing, you know, by having these very corrupt elite. Literally, you know, when you start selling our children, and they've been selling girls too, by the way, for a very long time. But, you know, they've been selling girls for a long time, the sex tourism, and now they're physically taking them to Europe to continue what they've been doing on Africa. So, I don't know what to say on this. Over to you, Sister.
And that's really the issue when we talk about poverty and the desperation that sometimes accompanies that. So whether you look at the children who were abused based on the information we're getting.
Sorry, Sister.
Yeah.
Sister, time out. There's one other point I wanted to add. And, you know, obviously the Epstein saga has shown us that this is not from a rich country to so-called underdeveloped country dichotomy alone. Within these so-called rich countries, it's been happening. So I wanted to add one particular example that I myself covered in New York City. And I'll say it because I wrote about it. Other papers wrote about it too. So if they want to take me to court again, I'll be very happy to respond there. There is a gym. It's very famous in New York and nationally too, called the Gauchos in New York City in the Bronx, where a very wealthy European American who immigrated to this country from Argentina. Name is Lou Almeida. The program is for underprivileged,
Yep.
young people, young boys and
Usually,
girls. But his interest mostly was in the young boys. And it's well known that he would abuse them, but then he would also give them expensive gifts. He would buy, in some cases,
shut them up.
even bought homes for the parents, houses. And everybody knew about this. There's a big magazine that did reported on it. They were about to publish the story. And then he threatened to sue them for big money. And the story came out in a very watered version. But I was also doing some independent reporting for a weekly paper called the City Sun.
Told you he was a legend. I told y'all.
But I'm happy that some people who are familiar with that big magazine told me that you are in the right direction, which, gave me that final emboldenment. So we did the story in the City Sun. This lawyer for the very rich man called the City Sun, its publisher, and said, we're going to file a lawsuit against you. And the publisher said, I'll be waiting for you downstairs to receive the complaint in my hand. And then
Let's go to
this.
Let's have discovery, and then we'll really figure it out.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
Here's the irony. The other papers, including the Daily News, then wrote an article referring to my article saying, according to the City Sun, blah, 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 blah. That's how they shielded themselves. And everybody knows about this in New York. The gym still exists. I think he's in his teens now, so I don't think, now maybe he sits on a wheelchair and just, looks, like that. And it shows you how even in a so-called developed country, something like this can be tolerated. That it took a black-owned newspaper to be the only publication to write about this, and then big papers like the Daily News to refer to us so that we shield them from any possible liability. Yeah, so I just wanted to add that. Sorry, sister, for interrupting.
Sister.
No, that was very much needed.
I think it was, sister, it was presumed, but let me say it explicitly. The children were, of course, African American and Latino. I had to say that. It was just presumed in what I was saying, but I wanted to put it out explicitly.
So, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
They're the same, yeah.
We should know Epstein is not the first, okay? There was a wealthy man, Francis Frank Duffield Sheldon. I used to live in Michigan. He was a Detroit area millionaire who was linked to a child sexual abuse and pornography operation. This was in the 70s. He owned an island. It was the North Forks Island. He helped establish a program called Brother Paul's Children's Mission, which was a summer camp for boys, but was later found to be a guise to exploit children and produce illegal material, which was then sent out. So now let's just be very clear. 25% of all the revenue that these social media companies make, 25% of their profits comes from pornographic material. So if they really wanted to shut down some of these rings, they could start there. There is a method for this information being spread out and all of that. But people are making money off of this. Let's just be very clear about this. So the authorities began investigating this man in 1976 after, quote unquote, suspicious activities were uncovered. But he fled the country. He moved to Amsterdam. The United States of America never requested for him to be extradited to come back to the United States to face any charges. And he lived out his life, wealthy man, trust fund, all of that. He lived till he was in the 90s. That's another question I have with God whenever I meet God, because it just seems like evil people seem to live really long, extended lives. And you see people doing good and they get cancer at 36 and die and so on and so forth. But yeah, he died in 1996 and there were active warrants and all of that. And nothing ever happened to him. So we have these things that have happened repeatedly. But getting back to the situation with Senegal, we have to absolutely, as an Africans and as Black people across the diaspora, address the issue of poverty. And yes, poverty is not an excuse for ever giving up our children, our bodies, and all of that. That never an excuse. But poverty does absolutely put people in very
I agree
desperate
with you
places.
100%.
Also,
Thank you
yeah,
for putting it that.
and it also
Thank you.
just makes you like, if you're working 2 jobs. I've had people who they're happy if their children want to spend the night at my house because maybe they work 2 jobs. But they've actually never met me. They've kind of seen me, and it's like you don't even know what happens behind my the doors in my house. But you've let your child stay the night. So my children, they used to get upset with me. I'm like, no, you got a bed in your house. And even if you didn't have a bed, we have a floor and blankets. You are going to sleep in your own house. You do not need to spend the night anywhere else. But Africans as a whole, we've got to take control back of who we are, our whole selves. But it's going to have to start with a different kind of leadership because, again, going back to the African Union summits, they talked generally about the dissatisfaction of the youth. They talked about this Agenda 2063 that they have, which is the 100th year anniversary of OAU being formed in 1963. But at the same time, we're talking about creating more alliances with the Western world to address health disparities in Africa. These people are not coming to save us. Okay, let me stop. I know we got other stories.
Okay,
No, but you're right.
Absolutely,
it boils down to our failure to harness our economic resources. A lot of these issues would be eliminated. We would not have young Africans drowning, crossing the Mediterranean to go and work in kitchens and toilets or cleaning the streets in Europe. So I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Black women in
Primarily,
AA and in Dubai
economic.
treated like slaves. Yes. Yes.
I mean, speaking to the story, it's that all of the so-called European powers, Belgium, France, Portugal, England, have basically had that kind of policy where children were just cannon fodder. More especially France. They had this issue of the hidden children, part of which we treated when we were talking about Blue Win. The fact that you have Belgian fathers come in, procreate with African women, discard the children. The French also did the same thing. So you begin to see if...
And the Chinese are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
There you go. So you begin to see this kind of secular history. But if people are not aware of what has happened before, how do they know that they're not playing into what has gone before? And one final...
I would say even examine the culture. For those of us who speak English, I can't go into French. Go back and listen to the nursery rhymes, the English nursery rhymes we were taught, and what these people sang and taught about their children. And then if you know any African language before the corruption, go back and listen to the kind of lullabies and songs we sang to our children. And you hear a very different concept of how we see children. Igbo people say, "Nwa ka ego," a child is greater than wealth. And all the English nursery rhymes I know, even Rockabye Baby, which one day I was singing it to my child and then actually listened to the words. And I'm like, wait a second, down will come baby, cradle and all. Am I trying to murder my child? What is this supposed to lull my child to sleep or have them have a nightmare because they're not sure if their mother likes or dislikes them? Yes. Go back and study the culture.
Yeah.
And come to your own conclusions.
And the Yorubas will say "Inshomo," which is you never offend a child, because a child will have a longer memory than you. Most of these kids you are abusing now will take care of you in the old age. So if they're not there, who's going to take care of you? So, that said, hopefully the authorities continue to clamp down on issues like that. And speaking of the Scramble for Africa, we go to Congo, and it's that the Guardian basically tabled an editorial for us to consider. which is the Guardian view on the scramble for critical minerals while powers vie for access. The labors die. A mining disaster in the Democratic Republic of Congo underscores the human cost of extraction, intensified competition for resources. Just look at this. If you just take a cursory glance at this paragraph, I'm not even going to read it. I just want you to look out for one thing. Just look out for where was the first line that they mention the population of Congo. It's not even in 1, 2, 3, 4. It's in the 5th paragraph. So it goes to show that even the editorial that is supposed to be centering the labor that dies, it's not even focused on labor. I don't get it. Comrade, you're the paper.
No, to me, it makes sense actually, because the bigger story would be not just the labor that dies, but it's the whole entire country population that gets nothing out of it. You see? So I would not lead with the labor. I would lead with the entire Congo. Which Congolese is benefiting from these resources, apart from the elite, apart from the leadership, apart from the business executives that are signing the deals with the foreign companies, apart from the management elite, right? The mid-level elite. So the employees, it's not surprising that the employees are exploited, because the article is saying that if the employees were being treated well, then everything would be fine.
Mm-hmm.
So the article itself, the premise is very deceptive, you see, because now you read it, say, oh yeah, the Guardian standing up for, African laborers. Yes, let's get good working conditions for these laborers. What? Get good working conditions for the laborers who are what? 0.00001% of the population of the Congo? No. Let's get good returns for the Congolese people in their entirety. You see?
Yeah.
So that is, The Guardian is one of my favorite papers, but that's very deceptive. And I reject that premises totally. And then the other notion on that, this is a scramble. A scramble makes it appear as if it had stopped at some point, and now there's a scramble again. How can you have a scramble over something that's been going on for 500 years? You see? Another deception there. That at some point, the Congolese were actually enjoying the resources of their country, except for this current scramble being led by the Chinese, being led by the United States, being led by the EU as well. No, there's no scramble. This is a continuation of what's been going on for 500 years. And I recommend Walter Rodney's, it's on YouTube, A Crisis in the Periphery, Africa and the Caribbean. And Rodney says the mistake that we tend to make is that at some point things change. And he says, no, he says the system always comes up with answers. But this is an ongoing process that's been going on for 500 years. It changes, it shapes and forms whenever there's a contradiction. So he said at some point, we ourselves were commodities and slaves. And then the contradiction made that, unacceptable. So they took another version. Colonial, that was a modification. The contradiction became too much. So they took another version. Give them independence, so long as we maintain control. Colonialism. And that's the version we've been dealing with since pretty much the 1960s. And then one final point. And this is similar to what we discussed when we were talking about Cuba in the beginning of today's conversation. Without an alliance, Congo will never survive. Congo will never survive in the sense that things won't change. So Leopold had his version. His version was, 10 million Congolese dead. Leopold got what he wanted. Then came the former Belgian colonial regime after they took it away from Leopold. They got what they wanted. Then they were kicked out. They put, Patrice Lumumba won election. They took him out. They put Mobutu. So that was the new version that lasted until kicked Mobutu out. And now, since the demise of Mobutu, we have seen various forms, Kabila, Rwanda, and now we have the top version of what Leopold was doing in the 19th century. And Congo can't protect its resources alone. It's so weak, It's so weak. Collectively, if a number of countries came together, and how do you come up together? You have to give up some political power, right? And form at least a stronger, cohesive nation. So those leaders, it goes back to what I said in the previous topic. At the end of the day, our worst enemies are these neocolonial leaders.
African
Over to
elites
you, sister.
or African accomplices.
It's so hard to choose one entry point for some of these stories because it's, it's so layered and it's so intertwined with our history over centuries.
Right.
And thank you for laying out the points that you've already laid out. Do you know that we don't have a singular body in most of these African countries that even tracks?
But sister, sorry, let me interrupt you again one more time. And because I want listeners not to, no, I want our sisters and brothers who are listening not to mistake that we are just talking. When we are talking, we actually also offering suggestion of alternative structures that because we should be part of the solution as well. If we feel the African Union is completely abdicating, there's no reason why, and we've mentioned this, to not create parallel organizations to take the mantle, you see?
Thank you. Which is dovetails exactly with the point that I was about to make, is that we don't even have entities in most of our countries in Africa that are tracking, that are regulating these mines, that are requiring health care, any kind of benefits for these miners, that are tracking the number of deaths. So the Guardian is saying 200, but there are other sources that are saying over 400. There's no talk about the number of people who survived, what care they're getting with everything that they have inhaled, what that is going to mean for their livelihood. Whereas in other parts of the world, you may talk about how do we, with all that is being extracted from Africa, what do we do with these abandoned mines? What happens to the environmental waste that is created? How does that impact the communities surrounding these areas where all of this wealth has been extracted and they don't get anything in return? There's no conversation about that. So I bring all of that up to say there are many of us studying, getting degrees, living on the continent, and we need to be raising these issues. However, for those of us who are outside of the continent, I think it's the very first paragraph where you hear Trump, or at least they're saying Trump said, oh, they're begging us. Of course, he lies about everything, but they're begging us to come and take. We also have a responsibility. It's primary election season to ask questions of candidates. And if there's a candidate who's like, I don't even know how to spell Africa, that's a problem, especially at the federal level, because these people are making policies and passing laws that are impacting what's happening, that's impacting what's happening on that continent as well. And so we have a duty as well to say, who are we electing into office? And for those already in office, how are we putting any pressure on them? Now, of course, now in the United States, that's going to be an uphill task because they're, collapsing all the environmental regulations, even here in the United States. Talk less of what do we care about what's. But even as we talk about young people and what they want to study, I just had that conversation with one of my children. I'm saying choose a line of study that aligns with your passion, but also allows you to help solve an issue that our community has. I mean, yeah, it's fun to get a degree and just have fun, but we've got to be a lot more serious than I'm just having fun. I think we can do both. I think we can have fun and do work that brings about our liberation. And that's the kind of conversation I'm having with my children. They don't always want to hear it, but I don't care. That's the conversation I'm having. Like, how are we being part of the solution here? And so when I see this story, Trump is a grifter. he doesn't care about anybody. And I don't know what he's going to do with all this money. He's bloating it and probably is just going to blow up one day right in front of us. But the question is, what are we willing to do? and can we start doing the little we can do, each of us? Yeah.
Yeah. That's the lot of Congo. Congo has been burying that bronze now since 1884. Since it's in fact, they went through the 5-year African World War, where that cost another 20 million lives. And it's incessant. It's just at some point, there might not even be anybody there. That's at the rate Congo is going, because people just come in, exploit the place, decimate it. It's sad. It's sad. Okay. For our final story, it's back to London. It's a billionaire said he feels. So this story comes from The Spectator, and it's a right-wing media mouthpiece here. So it leads with, why was Jim Ratcliffe punished for speaking the truth? He is Jim Ratcliffe. He's the part owner of Manchester United Football Club. And he did say Britain appears to be broken because it has now been colonized by immigrants. And he cannot recognize his country. So, comrade, can you explain what colonization means, please?
No, these are not colonizers. They don't have the powers of a colonizer like Britain had over its many vast colonies all over the world, including at one time what is now the United States of America. These are mostly low-income, struggling, working class. I call them settlers. Actually, they're much more settlers than other Europeans who call themselves settlers in Africa. The Europeans in Africa actually displaced Africans from their land and took over the land, and yet refer to themselves as settlers when they were aggressors. These are settlers. They come, some places don't even want rent to them. They have to keep looking till they find some location. In fact, some of them were resettled by the British government, right? So to think that all of them are going to be decent people, so then some of them commit crimes, including sexual abuse. So that then becomes emblematic and representative of all of them. That's complete nonsense. This was like something being written in the 1950s. If he's very concerned about people that are committing sexual abuse and crimes, I don't even know the statistics, but I'm almost sure that many, many more British women and girls are victims of sexual crimes by European British citizens. So that's what he should be yelling about. Or if you want something much more easier, he should be yelling about the Epstein files, should be yelling about Andrew repeatedly. And, ask Andrew to tell us who else is involved in the royal family. Well, that to me would be much more interesting. To scapegoat, the entire population or people who are coming from, by the way, they're coming to Britain because of what Britain and its allies are doing in their countries. You see? That's what's always missing, including in this guy's essay. Ask, why is it that people that are generally coming from countries that have much more resources than Britain, people that have much more fertile land than Britain, the air is much more cleaner, the standard of living naturally could be much more healthier, except for the fact that Britain and its allies are going to these countries and taking over their land. Even rural farmers are being kicked off. They can't even grow their food now. They go to the cities. They're chased by the police because they sleep on the streets. And that's how they end up coming to settle in Britain, So I'd be happy to debate the author of this article. And these are the points I would tell him.
Sister?
Who's going to tell them?
Well, you start.
Listen, there have been plenty of books written about Black fear around the Black nation, all of that. By their own statistics, Nigerian women alone annually have more
Births.
babies, more live births, and we have an incredibly high infant mortality rate.
But still,
have more live births than the entire Europe combined. By the way,
that's what it's all about.
Listen, the story isn't any different for the vast majority of Asia either.
Mm-hmm.
The only continent where the birth rate is outpacing the death rate is Africa at this point.
Okay. Yeah,
so,
actually, you have nothing more to add. Sister, you have nothing more to add to that.
Yeah, really. I don't know who's going to tell them.
The whole article, You explained the whole article right there. There's nothing to add.
They should have made him apologize, and I don't think he should have apologized.
I agree with you there also. I agree.
On the apology, I don't even care for the apology.
No, but there's no point for the apology.
And that's what the sister is saying, that it doesn't matter because these changes are inevitable, they're inexorable.
I don't care how many of their women, it looks like they're going to just like incubate white women and get some tests, labs. Maybe that's what Epstein was doing, and they're just going to have baby factories, or it doesn't matter. This is what the statistics show. I know they're figuring out ways to try and kill us off and so on and so forth. I don't know what to tell y'all. He did not need to apologize.
And what sister saying applies also here in the United States and explains a lot of what we're seeing manifest in the United States as well.
They can build, here in Texas, the booming business is private prisons. They are building football-length prisons to house, quote unquote, these immigrants. If you're deporting, then deport, right? No, and they're housing little kids, right? Not too far from where I live. I'm talking for the other Americans who are like, I'm a citizen. I'm going to say, okay, let's see how long that saves you, because these people want their money. And when they can't fill it with whomever else, they're going to fill it with you. But bottom line is, how long are you going to be able to hold on to that? Just like you couldn't keep up with slavery, that's not tenable either. So either embrace humanity and act like you have some sense, because, wait a second, isn't this the same Britain where the NHS was spending money to go and recruit nurses from African countries to come and take care of the elderly in Britain? And I forget, am I misreading? Maybe I'm misremembering?
Yeah, that's the case. Yeah,
okay, so you're going to need us.
She's providing the long view, and at the end of the day, the long view will prevail. That's how history is evolving.
And speaking specifically to Sir Jim Ratcliffe,
we are the first, the last, the everything.
He is 2024.
Now I'm sounding like
I know people. Listen, people were ridiculing Rodney King, but if you analyze carefully, I can see that as a profound statement. Can we all just get along? Because there's no other alternative. We are not going to disappear. And so long as you keep taking over our countries, we're going to show up on your doorsteps. Send some back.
Correct.
They will come right back. So at the end of the day, forget Rubio. There's actually one world. Otherwise, you would not be running all over the world, extracting resources. Why don't you use your own resources?
Correct.
You can't say, I want your resources in Congo, but you are not part of the world. What? Preposterous.
Or you want oil from Venezuela,
but I want to sell to you, but you're not part of the world.
It is so preposterous.
To put a finer point to it, there is a sign outside King's Cross Station, which is one of the major train stations in London. And it says, it's an answer to all the racists. It says, because you were over there, that is why we're over here. So you live with it. Hey, what else could we say? I just want to send one final point.
It's not where. It's because you are over there. That's why coming.
That's why we are here. So just to give a final point to Mr. Ratcliffe, Mr. Ratcliffe claims the immigrants they've colonized UK. He is part of a billionaire class in Monaco. The indigenous people of Monaco are just 9,000, and the population at the moment is 40,000. I'll leave you to do the math of who else is colonizing based on number. And if he really wants to understand what colonialism is about, he should ask Dedan Kimathi, he should ask Nehanda, and he should then ask Ya Asatiwa. That's enough. All of these people, because, they're blanket with money, they think they can just come out and speak. And like you said, comrade, once you don't understand what kind of timeline you exist in, you think people are still going to defer to you. And that is not the way the world is going. That world is dead. It's either you move with the world or they kick you out of the way. And the final point will go to Marco Rubio. You're not one of them. No matter how much you try, you're not one of them. Let's just say it this way. You are the help that they've just let into their house. When they no longer find a use for you, you will be put out to the pastures. That's it. So, sister, any final thoughts?
Okay.
We were here at the beginning. We will be here at the end. I don't care what y'all do.
And comrades.
I think that actually sums it all. Can we all just get along? To quote from the great Rodney King.
Yeah.
They don't, but they don't want to get along.
Yeah. Final announcement. This Wednesday, we're looking at the lives and times of Audre Lorde on women and resistance. So Audre Lorde, women and resistance this weekend. And until this Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And so from me and from everyone, it's good night and God bless. Good night.
See you next week.
That's a wrap for this week on the African News Review Podcast. We hope you are leaving with a clearer, more truthful picture of Africa. Remember, every story has another side, and we're here to uncover it. Don't forget to join us next Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern as we continue to challenge the narratives and reclaim Africa's voice. If you've enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep seeing Africa for what it truly is.